Yay, hello everybody. Welcome back. We are going to be chatting about Yona of the Dawn volumes 1 through 7. This will be spoiler filled for those volumes. So if you haven't read up through there, you probably want to click off. But if you have, then keep watching. Or if you want to be spoiled, you can do that too. But I am joined by my husband Sean and my friend Roger, and we're just going to get right into it. I want to start the same way I've started a lot of our other chats with just some general thoughts. And Roger, I want to know your general thoughts because it's been really hard to not hear anything from Sean, since we're married and we live together. But I've been trying to avoid hearing your thoughts also, but you can go ahead and kick it off.
General thoughts are so far it is fun, but it feels very early 2000s animes to me. If we have kind of like the traditional kind of cliche anime characters that I'm used to, which is comforting, but not like it hasn't totally snagged me yet, but it is fun. There are moments of darkness, but then I always have to remember that the main character is 16, and then sometimes I'm like, but I felt the same way when I was watching Sailor Moon back in the day. It was like always like, but isn't she like 13 or 14?
Mamoru is in college. Or what is it in the US? Darien?
Yes, and then she sounds like a 40-year-old like woman who drinks too much whiskey. She's always like, "Oh, Darian." I loved it. So good. But it's very that energy sometimes where you're like, and like all the guys always have to hit on her, of course. Like there's just some of those
and
things.
She's like oblivious.
And she cries a lot. She has very Usagi energy. Where she can be kind of intense when she wants to be, but she is kind of that ditzy, kind of unaware of the world type character that I imagine is going to grow into something pretty intense, because especially in the later volumes, she starts to get that like freaky stare that everybody's like, ah!
The anime, like, they look so intense right now.
You can feel their aura.
Like,
yeah.
If I was going to summarize it in one word, I'd say it's fun.
That's a good way to put it. Sean, do you have a one-word summary? He has to think about it. He has to ponder.
No, I don't know if I can do much better than fun. I think I feel similarly, where I'm not exactly blown away so far. It's not a Witch Hat Atelier experience where I'm like, wow. It's been fine. I agree. It seems a little cliche. It's funny though. I guess if maybe that'll be my word. Funny. A very.
Ooh, you added 2 letters to mine.
Yes.
Take that.
Yeah, it amuses me. Like the comedic parts amuse me, and I guess I think it could get darker. I mean, I guess we're talking spoilers. So I mean, we start off with her dad getting killed. So that's pretty dark.
Murdered by her cousin / dream lover.
Yeah, which is a little odd.
They're royalty.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like one of those things where I'll keep reading, but I'm not like I have to keep reading. It's like, I'll see what happens next, but I'm not driven really to I have to know what happens next.
It's one of those where it's just, I'm going to steal both your words, fun and funny, but I also just think it's like popcorn. And I don't say that in a negative way. I just mean the beginning is so silly and you're getting all these things so quickly. You're getting introduced to, because as soon as everything happens with her dad, that all gets established pretty quick. And then we learn about the dragons. And we're like, okay, we know about the dragons. And I was expecting there to be a lot of arcs to find, and it's just immediately going like, okay, now we have the white dragon. Okay, we're going from one thing to the next pretty fast. But I have had a lot of fun with it so far. And Sean said as well that it's really funny. And that's the thing that I really like. And after I read these first 7 volumes, because I have read on, I think it gets funnier and funnier. And I do think it gets a lot darker. I think it gets a lot heavier, but it still maintains the humor. And so I like that we're kind of building. And I think we're building as Yona is growing as well. It's almost like as she is becoming more aware, we're discovering more of the darkness, because there's that part where she is hearing that person talk about how terrible of a king her father was. And that was one of the first times I'm like, okay, so we're actually going to not one of the first times, but it was a notable moment as to where I think the series can go. And I actually think there's hints that Suwon, I think that's how you say his name, might actually be a good leader. And that's another thing that I was noting when I was reading those first 7 volumes, is that I think he's an interesting villain in that, one, you know his basic motivation, but you don't know why he seems to think that about the king and his own father. And then you really don't see him very much aside from when they're kids and their memories and everything. So I really wasn't sure how deep we were going to go, but I do feel like we're getting hints of this being really difficult for Yona, this being really difficult for Hawk. And the fact that Suwon might actually be a good king is interesting to me, because that makes him a much more compelling villainous character. And because he seems to not be just entirely evil or mustache twirling, which is funny because I agree that the rest of it is pretty mustache twirling. Like you would expect that kind of a villain because the rest of it has kind of the typical character types. But then he's not just like the evil character that just directs all his minions at the main cast. So it's like, I think has lots of potential, was what I thought of the first 7. Potential to get really, really good.
We start to see glimpses of that more at the end of 7.
Yes.
Where like he's having a conversation with one of his lieutenants or whatever, and he's like, remember why you did this. And it's like, oh yeah, this is Katya. She's just my needy. She was screaming at the door and nobody wants that. But like we definitely got like hints that he has deeper motivations, because in the beginning you were just like, okay.
Right.
Because you get introduced to him as like this, like through Yona's like puppy dog like eye lens of just like, oh, I'm so in love with him. And then the next thing you know, he's like standing over her father's murdered body with like a bloody sword. So it was interesting seeing that like kind of come back full circle. So now we're like, okay, there was more reasons to it than he just didn't like the king. Or there's reasons that he didn't like him.
Right. So I
thought at the end of 7 is interesting that he doesn't seem really that motivated to capture Yona. Like he's just like, I'll keep telling people that you're dead, basically, or at least not reveal that you're alive. It seemed like it was more, if I remember right, the fire general guy who wanted her like out of the picture, but he's just like, she's fine. I don't think he's afraid of her. I think that's kind of part of it. I think he's like, yeah, whatever.
Well, I think he has love for her from their childhood. And he wants to like protect her. And so he's like, oh, well, we had this out. And he doesn't believe that she's going to come after him, which is a choice.
And that's why because originally I was like, oh, we'll do a discussion for the first 5 volumes, 5, that's a good number. And I was like, 5 is kind of a weird place to start. Let's go to 6. And then I was mistaken because I was like, wait a second, 6 is the wrong volume. This arc more so ends in 7. 6 is like the middle of the arc. But the reason I wanted to read through 7 is because Yona having that moment of shooting down the person that's been responsible for the human trafficking. And so I feel like that's where you finally get the first big Yona moment, because a big thing for her, and I think this is a big thing in a lot of stories, is the main character is like, I can't protect people, I'm not strong enough yet, and that motivates them. But I do feel like Yona, the extra layer is that she also has her father's legacy dictating how she feels like she's supposed to be, where, oh, I guess I'm supposed to not ever choose the side of violence, and is that failing somehow? And then when she kind of has her feelings informed by hearing what people have to say about her father and hearing how being so innocent all the time doesn't mean that you are protecting anyone necessarily. And so I like that she has to grapple with that as well. And so it makes that decision a little bit, it has more depth than just like, look, I'm stronger now or something. It's kind of a bigger choice.
I did think the human trafficking storyline was interesting, because I was like, it's sort of dark, but I mean, that is pretty dark. I think it's a weird balance of, it's funny, but in a way is kind of like, really, we're going human trafficking for our first like big storyline? I was like, that's kind of not what I expected. Right. So it was,
the manga itself is so funny, and then it went that direction.
So
for me it was a little bit interesting, because then they juxtaposed it with Jaeha, and he is probably my least favorite of our current cast of characters. He's like the weird kind of skeevy, pervy, maybe kind of, I'm not totally sure. Like, he comes across kind of like an equal opportunist flirt because he flirts really hard with girls, but then also when he first introduced to Hawk, he was kind of hitting on Hawk. It's just weird. And so, like, him being there and then hitting on the girls who were getting, like, kidnapped from it was just like
That
was not my favorite part, to be honest. When they, like, I think they rescue, you know, some girl who was about to be kidnapped or something like that, but then it's like, oh, hey, what's going on? I'm like, wrong time, buddy. Like,
well, doesn't he tells the one girl, he tells the one
find
girl,
your pretty friend or something. It's like, all right.
I think it's supposed to be a way to sort of lighten the mood and like, it's implied that he makes these women feel better, but it's still weird to read when you're like, okay, the context here, I don't know if I'm being trafficked, if I really want another person hitting on me. And I don't know if that really makes me feel good anyway, but I do think there's a lot in the manga of, because later on there's a part with women and they're all fanning themselves over how hot all the men are. So I think it's just kind of a thing of everybody's so hot in this story. And Roger,
that's one of the things. That's one of the things that made me feel like it was early 2000s because it gave me like the Ranma 1/2 vibes, the Dragon Ball like Master Roshi vibes, but like a little bit toned down from that. So
it's not as sexual. It's just like
that's why I said it's
almost,
toned down from that.
Yeah, it's almost innocent in a way. But when you were saying he's like equal opportunity flirt, there's one part where he had been tied up or something like that, and then afterwards he's like, I kind of liked it. He's just always like a little, you're like, all right.
Yeah, isn't he was being like beat up or something by Hawk or somebody. Like, I feel, and then he is like, he says something about like, yeah, like he kind of enjoyed it, and you're just like, all right, cool, buddy.
Yeah, he has his own things he enjoys.
There's also a part where he's like taking off his clothes, right? I don't know. I think that like just happened, and then someone was like, stop it.
With a bunch of people.
Yeah.
That also happened with Yona at the end, and all the guys were like, ooh, and I was like, oh, she's 16. Sirs.
Since you mentioned him probably being your least favorite so far, we'll go to favorites. Who are your favorite characters or character if you only have one?
I mean, I really like Sinha and Pukyu. I think they're like the adorable duo, and I just really enjoy them.
So cute.
And he just like always is just like looming and being like kind of a creeper, but like he doesn't.
His mouth is always open.
No, he's always. Is that what I said?
What?
He's always just there, kind of lurking in the background, kind of just watching people.
Yeah. Because he doesn't know how to like interact with people.
Because he's been a cave child. Because his town is horrendous to him. That was one of those like very dark moments. It's like, oh, okay. But yeah, him and Pookie are probably my favorite. And then I kind of like Yoon, but Yoon also gets on my nerves because he's always just like, I'm a petty boy. And I'm like, can you shut up with that already? Thanks.
I think it's super funny that he's always announcing to everyone.
I am a very pretty boy.
I did like so much
people at the
when
grocery store, Sean.
I really liked when they were trying to decide, like, Yona, you can't go alone. You have to have someone go with you. And Yoon was like, I'm a pretty boy. I can disguise myself as a girl. And then I'm totally spacing on the white dragon's name, but when he tries to disguise himself. Yes, yeah. When he tries to disguise himself as a girl and it's like all lumpy in his chest and they're like, you're never gonna pass, sorry. And he's all devastated. I found that pretty amusing, but I love Sinha too. I'll wait for Sean to say his favorite characters.
So oddly, after complaining about how creepy he is, I actually think Jaeha's my favorite. And I'll tell you why. Sinha, I think he's amusing, but I guess I want to know more about him beyond just the shtick of I loom around. Like, I'm kind of like, is there more to him, or is he just going to loom for,
when you
40
arguably
volumes?
Know way more about him than you know about Jaeha, because you know
That's
all about
true.
His childhood, his drama, why he is the way he is. So I feel like he's more compelling so far.
Yeah, but I guess I just true. But I want him to I want him to speak at some point. Hawk, I actually weirdly find weirder than Jeha. Like, I don't know. There's some weird stuff where he says some creepy stuff to Yona, and like he kind of weirds me out, to be quite honest. So I'm
I think
like,
he's pretty much in love with her. I think he's in love with her and trying to not show it.
Doing kind of a poor job of not showing it, you know, like
she's so oblivious
she's
all the
oblivious.
time. She's always like, Hawk, don't joke like that.
like there's
It's
like weird panels of him like looming on her, and I don't know. I'm just like, I don't
Well,
know.
all
He's just
his,
so
like,
big
you're
and
gonna have
she's so
to-
little.
You're gonna have to make it. You're gonna have to make it sexier for me, or you know, like, how are you gonna try to make me stay, Yona? And just like his comments like that.
Like I don't know. So I like him when he's not talking to Yoda, I guess. And then
I get that because he feels like he does it with more intent. Like he makes kind of similar comments to Yona that Jeha does, but Jeha does it as like the
To everyone.
flirt that he just flirts with everybody. Whereas Hawk, you can tell he means it. He's like, oh, Yona. Oh.
like that scene where he like licks her wound or something. I was like,
The honey.
oh yeah, that's what it is.
Like,
He
it's
licks
a-
honey
random,
off
he just
her.
like-
I was like no thanks. And who am I missing? Oh, the white dragon's fine. He's actually nice. So maybe him.
Yeah.
But he's also like just like the like good noble character. So I don't know. He's fine.
I think it's hard for me to not take into account the other volumes I've read because that's kind of tweaked my thoughts about the characters a little bit. At this point in the story, I just loved Sinha, and I was like, he's absolutely precious. His backstory is so sad, and him and the little squirrel are so cute. And have you gotten to the panel yet where Yona asks him where he's learned to fight? Have either of you seen that panel?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
You've told me about it like 5 times though.
Really not a big deal, but
spoilers.
He says Ao, which is the name of his weapons master in the previous blue dragon, but that's also what he calls the squirrel. And so Yona's like confused and she's imagining the squirrel like, teaching him to fight, and it's so cute. But anyway, I love the squirrel. It's adorable, and I loved Sinha because he's just so pure. He's just such a pure little soul. And I actually really like Yoon, so I feel different than you, Roger. I think Yoon, every time he mentions
I like him
pretty
except
boy,
for when he's always being.
you like him except for this thing he does all the time.
I like
Except for
Yoon
35%
too.
of the time.
I really liked the scene where after the battle, all the pirates wanted to drink and be merry, and then he's like, "Calm down, I have to, heal you," or whatever. He's like being a doctor and running around, and they're just like, "Ha ha ha!"
Let us get
Silly
drunk.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of why I like him also though is because he's not as weirdly flirty as Hawk and Jeha towards Yona, and then Gija's not really super flirty either, but he's like got this like, I have to be purely devoted to my master. And so Yoon's the only one that feels like a genuine nice friend to her at this point, where he doesn't really seem to treat her in a way where it's like, oh, and also you're a beautiful girl. Like he's not always, doesn't seem to care. So I like that it's like a cute, genuine little friendship between them. And I was saying that it's hard to not like some of the other characters more. I genuinely have liked all the characters at the point that I'm at in the story. I feel like all of them develop a little bit more. They get a little more depth. And so I am excited for both of you to read ahead because I think that I think everybody gets much better. And then I talked about favorite characters. Do you have any favorite moments? Sean, you just mentioned Yoon going around asking all the sailors to stop and calm down so he could heal them. But were there any points that you really liked?
Is that directed at me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I liked the rescue plan with Yoon and Yona. I thought that was good. I liked Yoon showing that he was not actually a lady, but a pretty boy, and risking his life for Yona. I enjoyed that. And I thought it was good when she shot the bad general guy. I was like, that was cool. That was well done.
I like how all your favorite moments are like ones that happened in the most recent volume. Do you not?
I know, yeah. Don't remember anything else.
That's why I told Sean to, besides just the fact that this is kind of this arc completed, I was also like, I feel like some of your things, like you just need to read volume 7 and then then we can talk.
I'll put it this way: if I had only read like 3 volumes, like if I had done the like I'll check out 3 volumes and then see where if I'll keep going or not rule, I probably wouldn't have kept going. So I think it is true that my favorite parts are more recent. I did like the backstory for Sinha. I think my confusion with that is I'm just like, so he literally, like, if he looks at someone, people die. Like, I'm kind of curious about his
I feel like he's been misled
power.
to believe that. I feel like he's been misled to believe it because it's like superstitious nonsense from villagers.
I can't say anything.
So we'll get an answer before we get to volume 18 or whatever the heck hell is on.
Good poker face. Yeah.
There's a really good volume that's kind of more focused on him. And it's actually not, I've been telling Sean that I have a couple of volumes that I'm like, that might be my favorite volume. And I'll get to another one. I'm like, I don't know, maybe that one's my favorite. It's not even the one that I keep saying might be my favorite, even though I did really like it. I have to say, and this is a weird thing to have be a thing I have as a, sorry, I can't talk. As there's something that makes me like Sinha even more. And it's the way that he's drawn. Like when he has his really cool moments, I think he gets the absolute coolest looking panels. So that might make me sort of biased also because he just looks so cool. But you will get more about him. I just can't say. I'm that annoying person. Like when somebody is watching an adaptation and someone has read the book and they're like, "Oh, I know." That's what I feel like right now. But yes, I think that is a good thing to. I was wondering the same thing where I'm like, well, he has had his mask off a little, right? And I was a little unsure as well. But anyway, back on track. Roger, do you have any favorite moments?
I mean, nothing stuck out like super hard for me. The moments that like come to mind are like moments of Yona having character growth, because there was the moment where she got tasked by like the pirate master grandma lady to
she's my favorite
like
character.
go find the herbs or whatever. And so like Yona is just very dedicated to not being a burden to those around her. And so since she does give me such Usagi vibes, I just like that we're getting to that character growth a little bit faster than we do with her. And so she's very dedicated to being able to be like useful and important to those around her and to her people, especially now that she's having more of those glimpses of like, maybe my dad wasn't doing the best for as many people as I thought he was. And so I think she has a lot of interesting, like introspective character moments, and she works really hard on her bow on her own. And like, she's not really like trying to get other people to help make her better. It's just, she has this innate desire to be stronger, better, whatever for her people and those around her. So I think those have been my favorite moments so far, besides meeting Sinha and Pukyu, because Pukyu is too cute.
So cute. It's ridiculous. It's so cute. I think to that point, that moment where she is hugging that woman whose name also escapes me and has this almost motherly bond, because I mean, her mom died when she was really little, so she really hasn't had a mother figure for a long time. And so she's always, I think, thinking about her dad. But then in that moment, for her to finally have that kind of motherly affection, I thought was really sweet. But I already mentioned earlier the part where she overhears the individual talking about how poor of a ruler her father was. And the fact that she didn't just immediately get defensive. Her character growth to me is kind of, it's obvious in the art or the paneling, but it's not necessarily always in dialogue. For as cliche as this is, I do think that sometimes manga and anime can lean into just telling you exactly how the characters feel and everything they've learned and the life lessons they've gained. And she's not quite doing that where she just tells everybody like, this is what I understand now. She just kind of quietly gets to work, stays up, wakes up, shoots, practices her archery, is listening to what people have had to say and recognizing that she truly didn't know anything before. And she just kind of is willing to listen. So I really like that we have a main character like that. And I think it's tough when you have a character that starts out so oblivious because it can be a little aggravating. But she realizes immediately. I mean, even when Hawk and her at the beginning are being attacked and they fall from the cliff, and she even in that moment, I just feel like she's already recognizing like, I can't help anybody. I want to help. And even in that moment, she's risking herself to help him. So I just really like you said, Roger, pretty much any character moment for her. And then Sinha's backstory. I loved it. And I liked her naming of him. I was like, what is she going to name him? And the meaning of it, I was like, oh, that's nice. I wasn't sure what it was going to be, but I really liked the name that she gave him. What were you going to say, Sean?
Oh, I'm going to be a little crotchety over here. I agree with pretty much everything you said about Yona's character development. The only thing I disagree with is I was kind of, I thought the thing with the captain was forced. I liked the captain as a character, but like the kind of out of nowhere like big hug thing, I was like, okay. Like I just what, they knew each other for like a couple days. I was like, I didn't care for it. I thought the captain seemed too hardcore to all of a sudden out of nowhere be like, you're like a daughter to me. I was like, get out of here.
I think I took it as also because I feel like the distinction between genders is kind of very stark in this, where it's like it's a pretty girl and like these are men, and you know there's a lot of acknowledging of people being like men or women or girls or whatever, that she's surrounded primarily, the captain woman, by a bunch of men, and then Yona's surrounded by a bunch of men, and there's this like camaraderie between them. That's kind of how I took like this immediate bond. That's how I interpreted it. So I didn't think it felt silly. I actually thought the captain's quest for her, I thought that was kind of dumb. Because I'm like, I don't feel like Yona needs to do this to prove herself. I feel like she's fine. But
yeah,
Sean, well, okay.
No, I actually agree with that too. I just like, there's a part of my brain that I had to shut off a little bit because I thought, okay, if Hawk's actually her bodyguard, he just straight up wouldn't let her do this. Like,
that's true.
I was like, I'll just go with it because it's fine. But like,
although Yona does
would
kind
he have
of
a choice because she's also his princess.
Yeah, she does tell him, like, even when she is in the cave and she's like, no, Hawk, you have to stay outside. And I think that he obeys her before he defies orders to protect her. But I also agree that I feel like he would have put up a huge fight with her insisting on going on what is basically a suicide mission just to prove herself. I would have thought he'd be like, no, trust me, she works really hard. But no, I think that's a fair point. There was another part I was going to mention. Yoon crying all the time, and then people being like, are you crying, Yoon? He's like, no. And he's always pretending like he's not, but he gets really sad when people have to say goodbye. It's just so precious. He's so cute and sweet. Him crying because he has to leave the priest guy, and then he cries when Gija has to leave his granny, and his granny is hilarious. And that was one thing Sean mentioned as one of his favorite moments was the love potion stuff.
The love potion stuff's pretty funny.
I thought it was so random. I was like, okay,
it was incredibly random. I literally finished this at 5:20 my time, so 10 minutes to spare, and that was the last thing I read. I was like, what the heck was any of that nonsense? It felt like filler. It felt like anime filler.
Well, it is funny because there is a panel, or not a panel, there's an entire page where it says something like them as like high schoolers, and then if you look at her writing really tiny, she's like, I also just needed to fill a page. Which I found really funny. I think her humor, that was another thing I wanted to talk about. I think I really like the humor. There have been quite a few times I've actually laughed out loud reading this, and it just genuinely it just amuses me every volume basically I pick up. Even if it's a weaker volume, there's always something that gets a chuckle out of me. How would you say, the cat, how would you say the humor hits for you? Is it a miss? Is it, for the most part, it makes you laugh?
Oh, I think for the most part it's good. I like it.
Well, we know Sean loves it. Because it's very kind of dude bro humor sometimes.
I feel like that's the part that Sean finds the most annoying.
Except J-Hop, because he loves him.
Yeah, I mean it's like some of it's weird, but it's still funny.
Like the Hawk stuff with Yona, I don't
know. That doesn't hit me the same way. I don't know what it is.
Well,
I think
that's not usually written as humorous.
Yeah, I think Roger's right. I think J-Ha is so over the top and just hits on everyone that it doesn't bother me, with the exception of hitting on the lady who was almost trafficked. But I don't know. Hawk's just like, I don't know. He just is weird sometimes. I'm like, dude, stop being weird.
I really like Hawk with Jayhawk because there's that part. That's one of the parts that Sean started laughing out loud, and I'm like, "What are you laughing at?" And it was something that made me laugh too. Is when they see Hawk with those women, and the only reason he was even there is because that's where Jayhaw was. But then Jayhaw leapt away, so all they see is Hawk with all these women, and they're like, "Hawk, if you're gonna be a pervert, just tell us, okay?" And they won't stop insisting that he's being a pervert. And he's like, "I wasn't, guys."
Even YONA is like, says something about like, if you have urges, you know, just let me know before you leave or something like that. And I was like,
you don't have to lie.
Yeah, you know,
yeah, that was funny. And it's funny because like as weird as Hawk can be, he's so loyal to her that it's like kind of sweet. Like he doesn't seem to even notice other people. Because then when he goes to that woman that he helped, that he couldn't help but save from the corrupted officials, when that woman later is like, "Hey, I know you," and they're like, "Hawk, another one?" And he's like, "No," because it was just some lady. Like he does have a sense of like chivalry, not just Jayhawk. It feels like just wants to protect the ladies, but I feel like Hawk just feels like this is wrong. I need to do something. It's mostly like Hawk, like you said, outside of his interactions with YONA, is I think really likable. He's just so intense with YONA.
I do like Jayhaw's, the font that they use with when he talks sometimes changes when he's being like, I don't know. Yeah, kind of especially over the top or hoity-toity. I like that.
Yeah, Roger, how's the humor for you?
I think when it's between the guys or between other people, it hits. But I don't know, something about the interactions with both of the guys and YONA, I'm just not in love with. I wish that they all didn't need to hit on her and be in love with her. I wish that it could just not go there. Because those are the parts where I'm always like, is that necessary? Like, does everybody have to be in love with YONA? And I get that there's some weird mystical bond because she seems to be like the descendant of the Red Dragon Emperor, whatever the heck it is. But like, those are the parts where I'm always just like, that didn't add anything to like my story.
You know what I just realized? She has red hair and she has potentially multiple romantic partners. Is she actually Rand from Wheel of Time? I think that's, and she has people drawn to her. I think she's Rand. And she's wait,
Viren.
The dragon something? Whoa.
Viren.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely on.
Did you hear his conspiracy theory?
I did.
It's basically just a copy of Wheel of Time. Yeah, when you get right down to it. Wow, it's just a gender swapped Wheel of Time. Yeah.
Do you actually think that was one thing I was wondering? I'm like, is she actually the descendant? Because if they're cousins, Suwon and her, he could technically be the descendant instead of her, right?
You cut out for a second. What'd you say?
Oh, I was. Can you hear me? Am I good?
Yeah.
Okay. I was saying, one thing I had wondered when I was reading those first 7 volumes is Suwon actually the Red Dragon? And we're led to believe that it's YONA.
I don't think so, only because all of the dragons say they feel something like physically.
Yeah, you don't think they could potentially feel something with him too because they're of the same bloodline?
They haven't been contacted enough for us to know.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, is it possible that he could also command them? Now, I'm not saying this because I've read further. I just like, that's still one thing that I'm like, I mean, I don't know, because they're cousins, they're related. So that was a question that I had when I was reading.
You don't know if it's like a disseminated, like the entire bloodline thing. I mean, that's not an excuse. We can still critique it.
So do you feel like Geecha is in love with her? I just feel like he's very devoted and loyal. I don't get the impression.
It's hard to say because then they had the really awkward moment at the very end with the love potion.
That was just because, isn't it that you're in love with the first person you see? Because wasn't Sinha in love with Jayha?
Is it really though? Because then wasn't Jayha, I don't know, it was very misleading because then Jayha like pretended, right? Almost, it seemed like when he was going after Gija to just yank on Gija's chain, and then I don't know. It was very random, but it's unclear. It seems like maybe he has feelings, but he feels like he shouldn't have feelings. I don't know. I could see it either way.
I don't think he does.
I don't know if any of them really do, or if it's more that they just feel so strongly toward her, and
I mean,
so
Hawk is 100% obsessed with her.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
As
I
far
think
as
with
the actual dragons, unclear.
right.
I think even Jehaz is a little bit of a front. Like I can't tell. Like I think almost this could be reading too much into it, but I almost feel like he's telling himself that it's because like, oh, I want to be with Yona romantically.
Yes,
Because
that's
he's
how I
got
feel.
his like, I need my freedom thing. He wants to feel like he's choosing it, even though I don't think he really is.
That's the impression I
Yeah.
got too. Exactly what you said. I mean, even his line to Geisha about like, why would you purposefully want to? What does he say? It's very cruel. Like you're basically putting yourself in chains or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I agree. I think he again, it's that comes down to that they feel so strongly toward her, and for him, it makes more sense because so what he's accustomed to decide it's romantic in nature,
Mhm.
as opposed to it being this very strong loyalty to her. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's actually like harem, reverse harem vibes. Maybe they're all going to be in love. So we've touched on it a little bit, but do we have any current like major cons or things that maybe aren't major but keep it from being a favorite so far?
I mean, I
Being
think
a little
some
more
things have
critical.
not aged particularly well. I think there's a lot of comments about how you're just a girl, you can't do this, you're not strong enough, blah, blah, blah. They say it a lot to Yona, I feel like. And then there's some instances where I get like early 2000s, like kind of closeted homophobia vibes with like that scene with Yoon where he reveals that he was actually a boy all along. And then they just like, how dare you trick us? Like some of those moments, just I feel like don't age super great. So like I think those are the moments really that keep it from being like an all-time favorite, is because I'd rather have less of that and more like character interactions, because I feel like I don't know, because I don't know the characters well enough to be like in love with them. Like I think a lot of them we're still kind of like we don't really know what their motivations are, what their backstories are, like with Hawk and J-Ha and like some of the other stuff. I don't know. I just don't feel like I know them well enough. And then some of those other moments I'm just like not great.
Yeah, there's been a couple of things that I agree. I mean, and you have drawn comparisons to Sailor Moon. There's some stuff when you go back and watch Sailor Moon where you're like, so yes, I think there are some things. And nowadays, I definitely think, especially with social media, people, I guess you could say to some degree, I don't want to say progressing, like if you don't agree with this idea or something, then somehow you're bad. But I do feel like what we see as an issue or the language, how language changes is very rapid because of social media. Like it happens so much quicker. So, because this was written, I think, it started because it's still going. It started in what, 2014 or something? Like it feels like
Yeah, I don't think it's that old.
it feels a little older, but I think it's just because it's that's right around when social media started to really pick up and become a bigger thing.
I think in Japan it was in 2009.
Okay.
So I don't know when it first came over here, but yes. August 5th, 2009.
Are you looking to, Roger?
That's kind of early 2000s vibes. I mean, that's right when I was graduating high school, just after.
Yeah. And I mean, I graduated 2011 from high school. So, and that's right around when I feel like people were getting smartphones. And so maybe there's nothing to that, but I do feel like the difference between, I'll be very curious, like if you look at the difference between a 90s story versus early 2000s and the difference between early 2000s and now, I feel like the difference is much bigger in the tropes that are used and the tone and things like that, or the jokes or the language and things like that. But maybe not. Sean, what would you say are cons or potential things that keep it from being a favorite?
Well, I have conflicting feelings. In one corner, I think what I like about it is mostly the humor. So on one side, I don't want it to get too serious. But I think if it was really going to be a favorite at the end of the day, I would want it to get more serious. So I know it's kind of strange. Like I could see it. I could see being fine with it just being kind of like a campy, fun thing that I read. But I think if it's going to be like an all-time favorite or something and have to dig a little deeper, I just don't think so far. I don't really find any of the characters that actually deep or interesting. They're kind of just tropey characters that are fun, and you're like, oh, that's funny, but it's also like, I don't know. I think if it goes too hard, then it kind of loses what I like about it in a way. But if it stayed like this, I wouldn't consider it a favorite.
I think
Long answer.
I said something similar. Sean and I tried really hard not to talk to each other about it before this, but I did a wrap up and I talked about, and I said a really similar thing, that I am enjoying it. I'm having fun with it. I'm definitely going to keep going with it. But what keeps it from being a favorite is that I'm waiting for it to get more depth. And I definitely think it's getting a lot more depth the further I've read. And part of that is it actually like kind of branches out and gets bigger. And I think it's balancing the humor with everything else a lot better after this. There's a couple like funny volumes that feel like in between type of volumes, or chunks of volumes that feel like in between. But I do feel like we slow it down a little bit and take the time to get to know certain characters better, get to know the politics a lot better. So I like that a lot. I think maybe the con for me early on would be the pacing in a sense, because it's like, because that balance of having fun, moving things quick, having that adventurous feel, like that wasn't always balanced with the taking the time to get to know characters, because there are some stories where we take like so much time that it's kind of a downer. And then there's some stories where it's always light and fun, like what you were saying, Sean, where you're afraid it might lose that if it gets too deep. And then there's like what I compare it to as like the Full Metal Alchemists that have that extreme depth and then have the ridiculous humor, but it all kind of works together. And this one I feel like hasn't quite hit that. It's like the movement of, okay, now we're going to be really funny, and oh, but we're serious now. And so that's what I mean by it being kind of a pacing issue almost. But I do think it's getting I always liked it. I didn't think it was bad at any point, but I think it's so much better the further you read. It is going to be one of those stories where, Roger, how with fantasy books, we were just joking the other day. It's like, what is it about book 4 that everybody always tells you, like, you just have to read to book 4 in these really long series? I feel like this is going to be one of those series where it's like, well, you just have to read to like volume 10 or whatever with this one.
I feel like for manga, that's more typical because they tend to have a slower start. Like this one, I'm still not entirely sure what we're doing. Like, is the thought that we're going to rebel against Suan? Like, I really have no idea where we're going. She's just like gathering people and going on random adventures, and I don't really see like
why.
What is the point? Like, so I think that's one of the things I'm also like, I have no idea what, like, it's fun, but like, why?
I also just, I'm waiting to like YONA more. She's just kind of there to be almost like the butt of a joke. The joke just seems to be like, look at all the male characters, put her in awkward situations, or like I know like she's grown a little bit, but I don't know.
Well,
I don't find her that compelling.
Personality.
She does.
She's a much quieter personality in compared to the dudes.
I think she has zero personality so far. I'm just like,
agree with that.
I'm like, she's fine. Like, I don't know.
Wow, you just hate driven, motivated people who quietly work hard.
I guess.
Yourself. I feel like Roger just described you.
It's like looking in a mirror.
We all know you dye your hair and it's secretly scarlet red.
Yeah.
There's a reason there's red in your beard and not your hair. No, I think I get what you're saying. It's almost to the fact that because the dragons and Hawk and Yoon, like their personalities are so over the top, that her being quite quiet in her personality, it almost feels like she has none. But I also think that's we almost have to start that way, because I almost think she didn't have much. It was just like, I'm a princess and I really want to marry Suwon because he's just so
I really want to marry my cousin. It's my dream.
Yeah, she didn't. I mean, there wasn't. She was kind of in a bubble, and so that bubble has burst, and then now she's discovering herself. And I think I don't mind it feeling like it lacks plot. I don't disagree with it feeling like it doesn't have a set direction, but I actually kind of like that because I feel like Yona doesn't really have a set. At this point, her goal is like, I have to become stronger because otherwise, there's no way I can go up against him right now. And then she's kind of learning more about her kingdom and more about the other kingdoms and things like that. So I don't mind it feeling like it lacks direction, but I do think that she can come out of her shell a little bit. She's so young and she was so in her little privileged palace position all the time that I think we almost had to start from that place in order to start to see the growth. Because I do think the growth is there. I just think the growth is more gradual, like we're slowly seeing it. That's why I liked the end of this volume, because we're seeing her start to have more resolve and we're seeing her have, she's always been determined, but I just think we're actually seeing it in actions rather than just, I have to persevere.
She's
like you're
willing
actually
to murder people.
so much growth. I do want to ask, I think we've kind of established our thoughts here, but the romance in the story, would you say you kind of are rooting a little bit for Hawk and Yona? Or you're like, no, I hate them together? No.
No.
I just want her to have platonic relationships, but I think that's just romance burnout in general, because like every freaking story has to have romance at the core, it feels like, and it's like, it's not Yona's fault. But it's also like, can we not?
If Hawk could act like a normal person around her, then I'd be all for it. But I feel like he's just so weird. I don't like it.
Well, she also looks like such a child, it's hard to not remember that she's 16. Like with Sailor Moon, I mean, with the body proportions that they give the girls in Sailor Moon, it's easy to pretend like they're 20s plus. Whereas it's hard for me to be like, yes, this 16-year-old who looks like she's 12, get it. Like, no.
I think that my feelings is like, I hope, basically what you just said, Sean. I was like, I hope they start to act, because every now and then they'll have a moment where he'll take down those weird, like, I almost feel like his aggressive flirting is to cover up his like actual feelings in a way. And so when he just calms down and he acts like a normal person with her and he's kind of caring and nice and can have a conversation and they can have mature moments, then I'm like, okay, if we can get more of this, then I'll definitely I'll be on the hype train for the two of them. But if it's just going to be more like weird, he's like this all the time, then I would be like what Roger said, like, let's have nobody. That's why I'm like, Yoon and Yona, like, they're cute because they're not so weird with each other. But
because they have the fire moments. I feel like everybody else is always on 100 at all times.
Yeah.
If we could like dial it down a little bit and have like some actual real person interactions, I think that would strengthen this story a lot.
I think
everybody's always such a caricature.
I think the remark that Yoon is the mom of the group is why, because he's the most mature, it feels like, out of all of them. And he's also, I think, the youngest of them. I'm not sure if he's younger than Yona, but of the dragons and Hawk. Really quick, since Roger has also read Witch Hat, Ayo, the squirrel, or Brush Buddies. Because I think Brush Buddies are so cute. But oh my gosh, this
I don't know. I think the squirrel wins.
So cute.
I'm going Brush Buddy.
The squirrel has so much more personality, though.
It does. The Brush Buddies are
at least compared to the first 5 volumes of Witch Hat. I don't know if we get more Brush Buddy action in 6 through 10. Cannot speak to it.
They're just cute, but yeah, I agree.
They're both cute.
Pukyu comes through. He chews through the ropes. He saves people. He eats too much food. He's also like a carnivorous squirrel, which is interesting.
I did particularly enjoy the panel with the love potion where the squirrel is just like he's just like attached to one of their faces. I can't remember which one, but he's like, just like right here. And I was like, that's good. I like that.
So cute.
Good stuff.
Maybe.
I found it funny that Sinha still kept his distance. Like Jaeha was freaked out that he like was keeping the same exact distance. He wouldn't like get closer or move further away. He was just like right beside him. I was like,
He became that meme of like that hamster behind like the Coca-Cola bottle or whatever, where you only see like half the
yeah. It's like,
I love how weird and awkward Sinha is. I love him so much.
even a love potion couldn't make him not weird and awkward.
He did say something though when he was under the effects of the love potion. He had one little speech bubble. He did say something. I don't remember what it was, but he said something.
And then I thought we could end it on predictions. What are your predictions for this? Where do you think it's going? Is there any specific plot you think we're going to dive into more, or anything with the characters, or just like an out there, like what I was saying earlier about how I was wondering, is Yona really the only one? Is there going to be a cool twist where it could be potentially Suwon as well?
I don't know.
We're gonna have to figure out more of Suwon's motivations of why he did what he did, because it's currently very mysterious, but they've been hinting at that there are reasons. And I feel like with this cover of Volume 8, like we have to get more information about what he's doing. Don't try to front. And then aren't there supposed to be 4 dragons? And we've only found 3, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So here's my out there prediction. Out
Okay.
there.
Okay.
I think at some point
Suwon is her father.
I think at some point the fire people will be the actual really bad group where even they
Fire
turn
Nation?
on
Fire Lord
Yeah.
Ozai.
yeah where even they turn on Suwon, and I think there's gonna be a deal with the devil where Yona and Suwon tag team. That's my far out prediction.
Why is that your prediction? Was there something that happened that made you think that?
I mean, I'm not trying to say he's a good guy. We start off with him murdering her dad, but he seems more, I don't know. I mean, one, if her dad actually killed his dad or whatever thing happened, I kind of get maybe wanting revenge. So I kind of want to know the answer to that. But he seems more complex, and then the Fire Nation people just do seem like kind of the mustache twirling evil, and they seem like they were, I'm trying to remember like the early volumes, but they like took water away, like dried up a water thing from like the other tribe. I don't know, they just seem more overtly
To
bad.
Hawk's tribe.
Yeah, they just seem more like we want to conquer, and I don't know if Suwon is interested in conquering. I think he's interested in ruling, but I don't know if he's interested in conquering. Anyways, that's it. That's my far out prediction.
Very
We shall
nice.
see.
Are there
You
any
heard
other
it here.
predictions? Do you have any other ones?
Not really.
I still
I mean, 'cause
further
I don't know what
into
we're
the
doing.
yeah. I just wonder if they're, to your point about you know, is it going to be like Yona has to side with Suwon in certain instances and things like that. I still, the reason that I find the idea of Suwon having some control over them also, or some kind of, at least like there being a bond between them as well, is because I think it would be super compelling and interesting if after developing this bond with Yona, and we see these bonds building and building, if suddenly it's like, if he's actually the real one somehow and it's not actually her or something like that, then who do they actually, I guess, work for? Who do they align themselves with? Because in their blood and in their purpose, it's supposed to be like, we have to protect this person. But at the same time, if that's not the person that they all want to, I think that could be really interesting. So I guess that's my far out there prediction.
I guess if
And
we're talking
also-
really far out there, there's probably going to be an evil dragon, right? There has to be some reason that the dragon warriors exist and their bloodline is being continued. So there probably is going to get at some point, there's like, oh, the dark dragon has to go up against the scarlet dragon. That would be my like kind of uber prediction, but we'll see.
If there's actually like other dragons in other realms or something too, that could be kind of cool. I hadn't thought about there being additional dragons beyond the main ones. So I like that idea too.
But it's like there has to be a reason for them to have been continued for so long. And I don't remember. I feel like we got hints of it, that there was like there's like the legend of what happened and why their bloodline is being continued. Like, what are they supposed to be doing? I don't remember.
It happens
If
so early that you get the legend, because it really is just like Yona's dad was killed. Hawk and her fall down a cliff. Now what? Oh, also there's these dragons. Let's go look for them. It just like all kind of happens so fast, and you're like, okay, I guess this is the lore of this world. So it's kind of definitely something I almost want to go back and look at now to see if I can find hints, because that's another thing too, is the wording is interesting. Because isn't it at the end of volume 7? No, that's not true. But there's like this like, well, the wording of the legend, I feel like there's certain things that are ambiguous. So I kind of want to go back and see. It's one of those mangas where I'm like, how much has she planned from the beginning? Is some of it a little like go with the flow? Because I think Full Metal, when you first read it or watch it, it's sort of like, all right, I guess I don't want to say any spoilers, but you're like, I guess we're over here now. And it kind of feels meandering. But then when you reread it after knowing where it ends up, then you're like, oh my gosh. And you see all these little hints along the way. So I'm wondering if Yona's going to feel like that too, or if it's one where maybe it's more of a pantser situation where some of it is maybe just, I got to come up with this plot line for this week, sort of a feel.
I'm voting pantser.
You think so?
When I was reading her little blurbs on the side, I feel like a pantser. I stopped reading them because I was like, I don't care anymore. But
some of them are funny. I don't read all of them, but I was telling Sean, she started drawing her assistants and I think her sister and stuff as like meerkats and pandas, and she just draws like her assistants being confused by her decision to write this, and they're like little meerkats looking funny. And so I like her humor a lot. I like those little extra things. But anyway, were there any final thoughts that we wanted to put in? No? Okay. My final thought is just that I hope that both of you keep reading and that we can join again for another chat. And I think
when does the next arc end, since you're so far ahead of us?
I would say there's volume 10 was really good. But the completion of that arc is a couple volumes later. So I'll have to double check, but I want to say it's around like 15 or something. I'll double check. What I'm thinking of in particular in the arc that I really want the both of you to read, I think is within the one I really like is 10, because it's like where you start to see a shift and it's opening up a little more. And then where that goes is a couple volumes later, I think. But it might take more time than I realized, because I kind of devoured that arc like in one night. I was like, okay, I'm just going to read maybe a little bit of this volume. And then I finished the volume. I'm like, well, I want to know what happens next. And I kept reading. So I'll have to double check the volumes. But yes, that is the plan. Does that sound good? I'll figure out what that is. And that's what we'll plan on discussing next time. Yeah. Because I told Sean, I was like, I kind of want to tell you, do you care that much? He's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, I won't say anything then. So
basically, if we're not super in love with it by the end of this next chunk, then we know it's not the manga for us.
I think you're gonna like it. If you already enjoyed these first
I don't
7,
hate it at all.
Yeah.
I think I like it more than Sean. Sean seems a little bit more on the fence.
He's on the fence.
That is true.
Yeah, I think you're gonna really like it. Just knowing your taste, Sean, I think you're gonna really like where this.
Hey, don't hype it up. I don't.
Okay, this was a lot of fun. I can't wait for that next chat. I'm already done with my reading for it, so I'm ahead of schedule. But I'm gonna be like asking Sean, like, oh, by the way, are you gonna pick up the next volume? Are you gonna pick up the next volume? So, Roger, I'll do the same thing to you.
Well, once you tell me how many it is, I'll just request the rest, because I have up to 10 right now.
Okay, that sounds good. And I'm missing a couple in between because I bought a bunch of them, but I didn't get like 7 through 11, I think.
Oh, so the ones I need.
Yeah, I know. But they didn't have them.
You have to go to the library.
Yeah. Oh no, the library. It's like Park. Oh, I always forget you haven't seen Parks and Rec. I was going to say on Parks and Rec, there's this joke that they all hate the library and it's the worst place in the world. And it's like the most out of place joke, but it's super funny. Anyway, I was going to say it's like, ugh, it's not funny if you don't know. So never mind. But anyway, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us, Roger. And thank you, Sean, we had to keep our lips sealed for a long time to not really go in depth about it. But this was a lot of fun, and I'm excited for the next chunk. So thanks everybody who ends up watching this. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll see you all later. Bye.